Thanks for joining us on episode 1547 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Dr. Travis Parry. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to grow your business without sacrificing your health and relationships is key. And one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mater. My dissertation, I won't bore everybody, is essentially looking at couples who were on the same page values-wise. If they had shared values, then I found that they were happier psychologically, they had better marital satisfaction, and they had stronger financial stability.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's podcast interview, I interviewed Dr. Travis Parry. I asked Travis about his books and his approach to finances from a family perspective. I also asked Travis about business and leadership, and Travis also shares with you what it means to have balance in your life. I have a great book that's been out for a while now called Inspired Living. Assemble the puzzle of your calling by mastering your time, your talent, and your treasures. You can find out more about that book over at inspiredlivingbook.com. It'll take you to a page where there's information and you can sign up to get some mailings about it as well as purchase a copy there. I'd love to see you get a copy and share with me how it impacted your world. Dr. Travis Parry is the #1 best-selling author of Achieving Balance and Marry and Grow Rich. He's earned a master's in psychology and a PhD in family relations to better understand finances from a psychological and family perspective. Travis is the founder of the Make Time Institute and has helped thousands of business owners and couples in all 50 states achieve their financial goals. He is an international speaker and the podcast host of the Balanced Growth Show. However, his greatest accomplishment in life is becoming the husband to his beautiful and talented wife of 22 years and a father to their 8 amazing children. Welcome to the show, Travis.
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott.
Absolutely. So it's great to have you. And I shared a little bit in the intro about some of the work you've done, the books you've got out, your newest one, Marry and Grow Rich, some of the work you do around productivity. And we've talked a couple of times before. We've got a lot in common on how we see things. So I'm really excited to have you in here and hear some of how you present and achieve the things that you like to achieve with your folks and your clients. But before we go there, intros are like the highlight reel of our life, and they never really tell the whole story. So back up a little bit and unpack for us a little bit of your journey and what brought you to the point of focusing on the work that you do around time, around marriage, around productivity, around balance, and all of these things.
Of course, yeah. Back up a little bit. I wanted to become a financial advisor because I saw the unlimited potential to help people and also earn a great living. As I was working as a financial advisor, my father, who I was very close to, was age 49. We were planning his surprise 50th birthday party. 2 weeks before that, I got just a ton of phone calls from everyone in my family. And I had it on silent because I was in a meeting and all these things. And then my wife got a hold of me and said, Trav, your dad is having cardiac arrest. And in my mind, like, cardiac arrest, what is it? Oh, heart attack. My dad, he rides hundreds of miles a week on his road bike. He's on his mountain bike. He's fine. I'm sure it was just one of these things that they're going to go check him out. What I didn't know is he'd already passed away. He was basically dead on arrival at the hospital after the helicopter flight and after his friend had worked on him for 30 minutes plus doing CPR. And it just rocked my world. I was not prepared. Nobody in our family was prepared for this. My dad was healthy. There was no signs of anything. And sure enough, after the autopsy, found out that my father died of the widowmaker, or essentially buildup in the plaque in the arteries that doctors didn't know even existed, and it normally doesn't show up. The first sign is typically heart attack or death, and in this case it was both. And so after my father's passing, yes, there was the mourning, there was the grieving, and quite honestly, we still grieve his passing every year, Christmas time, holidays, birthdays, etc. And I miss him. My faith has kept me strong, knowing I'll see my dad again, and I believe that families will be reunited. But at the same time, it's still hard when you're going through those situations. And what it did for me is, after about 4 years of being a financial planner and financial advisor, my very first death claim was my own father. So I had to go and call the life insurance company, get the deposit, help my mom pay off her home, pay off debts, get things situated with the attorneys, with the CPAs, with taxes. I spent a good 2 years helping my mom clean up and really move to the next phase of her life. And it gave me a whole different perspective. And some people say, well, Travis, you're going to be a financial planner. That's going to be awesome. All this experience is going to help you. And yes, but it so rocked my world that I really asked God, what am I supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be on this path? Is there something that I need to do to change? And I did a lot of soul searching. And I remember, it's out in the garden, because that's where everything happens when you're like trimming the bushes or mowing the lawn. And if you got some time to think, I was ripping out all these bushes, and the thought really came, well, you need to go back to school. You need to change and go sideways on your career. And I was like, why? You never get all the dots. The dots never connect until the end. You just don't. So you get one step closer to something, you're like, oh, okay, maybe that's why. Oh, maybe not. And you keep moving. And I found that through this process of exploration, after I thought I knew where I was going, I went back to school, did a psychology, a master's degree in psychology, and then eventually a PhD in family relations to really understand stress. So my dad died of a stress-related heart attack, but also understand motivation and goals and what it is that we're all motivated by. And I found that this coincided with so many business owners who are dealing with a boatload of stress. And while I was helping them with their money, and money stress is a real thing, it's one of the major causes of problems in families and couples and things, I didn't understand the psychological components. And now I had those tools. So I started to coach, and I started to go back to similar clients and say, hey, I've helped with financial stuff. Let me help you with the psychological related things and family related things to money. And I really started to feel like this was the calling. And I got on stages. I wrote several books now about it. I did a dissertation all around these topics and ideas, and I have a podcast really to help business owners who are so burnt out, who are dealing with a ton of stress, to really save their life. And the reason why, the real reason, Scott, is I couldn't save my dad. I didn't know that he was ailing, but I can save other dads from having this ending, to die prematurely. Now, one thing as a caveat, my dad did live his life intentionally with purpose. He was phenomenal. He was a great father and the best father I could have ever dreamed of. We had a phenomenal relationship. I know not everybody has that gift. I did, and I was given that. And so that makes me want to be an amazing dad and be such a good husband and share that and be an example of what he was to me. But what I felt my calling is to really help dads and families around all these topics of staying balanced, being healthy, and reaching your financial goals.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about balance and healthy and financial goals, for you, what does that look like? So not necessarily for your clients. I literally mean for you personally. What do you look at as success and balance and that in your life?
Yeah. So in my book, Marry and Grow Rich, I talk about this, which you can get at marryandgrowrichbook.com. But at the very beginning, I actually say that I've researched with about 1,500 business owners. Now it's close to 1,600. I do podcasts. I do book interviews. My team actually scours the internet for those who fit these molds, and we interview them and we get this research. And we found that there are really three types of business owners. They're all trying to have what I define as balance, as a psychological sense of balance. It's not an equilibrium of time. It's not 50 here and 50 there, or even thirds here. No, it is a more of understanding what your priorities are. So what I define as balance, and what I've seen in the research and with so many individuals now, is it's a psychological feeling of balance. And how that's accomplished is by putting your priorities in order. We always hear this. Oh, you got his priorities in order. What does that actually mean? So in my first book, Achieving Balance, I actually break that down and say, this is how you do it. This is the logical step, because I did it when I was struggling to know what I should be doing in life. And God helped me realize that once you uncover what your values are, what you truly are going to become someday, what God wants you to become, then you systematically say, what's the most important one? For me, it's relationship with God. Second is my physical health. Third is my relationship with my spouse. Fourth is relationship with family. Fifth is my business. Business is not number one. And I've done this from stage, Scott. I've asked people, I've done quizzes and assessments, and most people have their spiritual or physical health at the top, and their relationship with spouse and family somewhere at the top 2 or 3. So knowing that, most people's top priorities are not their business. It's not even the money that comes in from that business, but it is all these relationships, the health and relationship aspect. Of course, that's related. But when they make time for those priorities, they feel balanced. So back to these 1,500 we've researched, a lot of business owners don't think they can have balance and grow their business. And I would help them get to a sense of balance. And then they would tell me, well, this is really nice, but how do I sustain this long term? I found that there are really 3 types of business owners. The first one, type 1, they're actually afraid to grow their business because they think they'll lose that balance that they have. Maybe they're pretty healthy. Maybe they have great relationships and they're able to spend some time doing some quality things with their loved ones, but they lack the growth of the business, which, interestingly enough, if you grow the business, you can actually step away more and you have more freedom and balance, right? So there's a fear factor there. The second is they're afraid that in this type 2 entrepreneur, they're actually afraid that if they focus on balance, they won't grow their business. Okay. And so they say, forget balance. They throw balance out the window. And then while I do believe their work-life balance is the wrong term, and it's not a 50-50, they say, no, there's no such thing as balance at all, which is incorrect. It's not true. They rewrite it as, well, it's work-life harmony or integration, or it doesn't matter the term they call it. It's still not the appropriate understanding of what's psychological balance. They're not going to have major stress because they're making time for the things that are most important. So these guys, what the unfortunate problem here, Scott, is that a lot of these type 2, they get caught up in addiction. They get caught up in workaholism. And then they work more when they're stressed. And then they work more when they're successful because it's addictive, highly addictive. And I talk about it all in my first book, Achieving Balance. I won't go into that, but essentially they're stuck and they're never able really to get out of this workaholic trap alone. And so I do a lot of help there. The type 3, this is where everybody actually wants to be. This is why we got into business. We want time freedom. We want financial freedom. We want freedom just in general. Okay. We don't want to pay a ton of taxes. We want to leverage all these assets that we have. And we want to be there with our family. And so what's interesting is those that actually I found that were in these type 3 categories, they all tell me this. My wife was the key. These are mostly men. So my spouse is the key. I'm like, well, how do you mean? It's because of the support of my spouse that I was able to have balance, why I grew my business. And that is the whole crux of the balanced growth framework. That is the whole piece that if couples can work together and be on the same team financially, they can grow a business and they can have the time freedom long term, have that balance long term, stay healthy, have great relationships throughout the rest of their life. And what's interesting is when they have great balance, it actually helps the business grow. And when the business grows, they have more balance and freedom. It's a cycle.
So there's definitely some things there I want to unpack as well. But before I go there, one of the things I like to highlight on the show, and you've mentioned it already a little bit as you talked about discovering your calling, is the intersection between our faith and our spiritual walk and our life journey. And I think it's related, at least for those of us of faith, it should be related to our sense of balance and harmony, belonging, and all of those things. For you, how has your faith journey affected your life journey, vice versa?
Yeah. So, Scott, for me, spiritual health, relationship with God isn't part of my journey. It is the journey. It is the most important aspect of my life. And I don't say this because I'm trying to appeal to people of faith or turn people who aren't of faith away. I'm saying this because this is my number one priority. And the way that I like to roll this out is, what is your number one priority? What is it that, motivates you the most? And for me, having my dad die, knowing that, assuming, and Grandpa always tells me what assume stands for, but assuming that he was in perfect health, absolutely blew me away. There is no describing this. I was distraught for a very long time, unconsolable. My wife couldn't even give me a hug for 2 weeks. I was just devastated. When I awoke from this coma and I started to come back to myself, I went and got tests done. I wanted them to test my heart. I wanted them to test my brain. I wanted to test everything that we could figure out, like, what is related to this? How is stress and stroke? And that's why I started going on that health journey. But also, once I realized, okay, I'm actually doing pretty good, but I can make some changes. We started making some of those health changes. I realized, what is this all for? What is the real purpose? Yes, I believe in God, but do I believe God? Mm-hmm. I have faith in God, but do I have faith that he has faith in me, that I have something to contribute to this world? What is that? Is it being a good dad? Yeah, it is. Is it being a great husband? Yeah, and I had some things I needed to make changes on, big changes. And I started to. My wife and I, we could talk about that whole journey as a separate episode or something, but that's when the changes started to take place. That's when the deep work really began. So I'll tell you all that because my spiritual outlook, knowing that one day, it could be tomorrow, it could be today. If I step out of this realm into the next and I meet God face to face, which I believe I will, I want him to say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. I want him to be pleased in me. And I think we have this idea sometimes that we have to be perfect, or perfect means whole. It means complete, the Hebrew word of this. And so for me, if I've completed my mission on earth, that is Christ-like. It is what God wants us to do, I believe. And so I wanted to figure out, what is my actual mission? What is it that I'm supposed to accomplish here? How do I do that then? Those are all the things I'll figure out. Simon talks about find your why. It's the same thing. What's your mission? And now I'm on a mission to help other business owners figure out what is their actual mission in life. Not just business, but it is part of it. And now I feel like those two are connected. Now that I've figured out what mine is, how I help others to do the same.
So you mentioned the balanced growth framework earlier. Go ahead and unpack that a little bit for the listener. What is the focus of that? What is the approach that you take when you talk about that?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So what I've discovered is in my first book, Achieving Balance, it was all about what are your values, how to use your time wisely, and really work toward kind of achieving the goals to become better. That was the whole spiritual awakening, and which works amazing. But what I found is it was a short-term approach. When I could start involving the spouse with my clients, and the spouse was on board on working together to develop together, then I saw long-term success with these clients. And my dissertation, I won't bore everybody, is essentially looking at couples who were on the same page values-wise. If they had shared values, then I found that they were happier psychologically, they had better marital satisfaction, and they had stronger financial stability. It was all related. Money, happiness, and relationships, because they were on the same team. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have your individualistic ideals and goals. No, it means you support each other, but it also means you have shared goals and you have a shared vision. If you can follow that, you can accomplish anything, in my opinion. you can accomplish anything, you're on the same page. It's when you're not. So the growth part of this is, how does that work to grow the business then? Being on the same page financially with your spouse is key to then being able to grow that business. Those type ones we talked about earlier who are afraid, once we get the couple on the same page, they can rest easy knowing that, hey, no matter what happens as we grow, we're going to stay solid. We're going to keep working. We're going to not stress out. We're going to support each other. And there's ups and downs as a business owner. We just know this. So the growth part happens really there together as a couple. You grow together, something that I call coupled development. Personal development is great. That it's a $54 billion industry, and maybe even some people consider me part of that. But really, it's based on 1940s research of Maslow, who said at the very top of the most important thing in life is self-actualization. It's actually not true. 1940s research was disproven finally in 2010 by a bunch of psychologists. They said, no, at the top, it's not self-actualization. It's parenting and marriage. What? These are psychologists. These weren't family people. And they basically are saying that they're not seeing self-actualization. So the whole personal development field, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, all these guys I've worked with for years and years have been following that self-actualization, this personal development track, which is good. But better and even best is being on the same page with your spouse and working together towards couple development. So that's how you grow together. The last piece of that was then how you grow the business. As a lot of people that I work with that are business owners, they think they actually are business owners, but really they own a business. And that is a distinction that I need to make. And I make it in my book, Marry and Grow Rich. I like to look at a soccer field as the analogy here, Scott. With soccer, you've got an offense and you have a defense. I played soccer. A lot of people understand the concept. And even if you play football, you have an offense and defense. You're just not on the field at the same time. But looking at this in business, you have marketing and sales, basic offense. Okay. On defense, you have fulfillment and operations. All right. You can't really win the game without a defense. You're going to get scored on, and you can't win a game without an offense because you'll never score. You just tie, right? As good as you can get. So you need both. But in business, the same way. Unfortunately, with a lot of business owners, they're actually running around playing every position. Mm-hmm. They're doing marketing, they're doing sales, they're doing fulfillment, they're doing operations, blah, blah, blah. Even if they have people that help them, they're still so involved. If you want to grow the business, if you really want to 10x your business, you have to get off the field completely. So step one is you get really good at something. Get really great at sales and delegate everything else. Get really good at the fulfillment, delegate everything else. And then you get off the field through thought leadership. If you want to become a thought leader in the industry, you write a book, you do podcasting, you speak, you get on podcasts, you get on media. Like, you have to be the face and the voice of the company that really drives the revenue this way. It is what has brought me off the field. Writing my very first book. I wish I would have done it 10 years prior to that. It would have made all the world a difference. Getting on podcasts, second one, and then on keynote stages, third. And quite honestly, this will grow your business more than anything else because you now have the time to put energy into growing the systems on play. So you can spend 10% of your time managing, training those teams that are now your sales team, your marketing team, your fulfillment team, your operations team. You can invest in them because you're CEO growing the business from the other way. Eventually, if you want to really just become the business owner, you can hire a CEO. You can step away and you can own the business on paper, which will allow you to leverage it. It'll allow you to sell it. And a lot of business owners I work with, they want to leverage or sell the business so they can invest in other businesses and business stack and really take it to the next level. But most of the business owners I'm talking to, they're still on the field in some respect. They still can't let go. It's a control thing. It's a fear thing. And it can be solved with systems and great thought leadership.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've seen because of that, using especially family-owned businesses, it's one of the reasons that all the studies will show you that most family-owned businesses don't last 3 generations. You know, by the third generation, they're closed. It's because the founder stayed in the game too long on the field and never really developed the systems, the processes, the people, even the other family members in a way that allowed them to run it. And so it just falls apart.
Exactly right. Only 13% make it to third.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm living proof. I was supposed to take over the family business, and I went off to college and I'm going to do my own thing because there wasn't a path. There wasn't any of this set up. So they're not to their detriment. They were great construction minded individuals that they didn't really understand this family business concept and how it can go to the next generation. So it died after second gen.
But it's like you're talking about. It is the difference in mindset between owning a business and being a business owner. There is a difference in those two things. And it's a mental difference. It's a framework difference. It's a thinking difference, much more than any sort of quote literal difference. But you have to change your thinking or else you can't change what you're doing.
Exactly.
It's change your thoughts to change your actions is usually it. So earlier you mentioned talking about priority order and people putting their priorities in order. I think a lot of times people are in those times where, especially as business owners, we're just dealing with the urgent. Everything that is flying at them, they're dealing
Tyranny
with.
Of the urgent. Yep.
It's on fire right now. I've got to put it out. That's it. That's as far as they can think about priority. So how do you help them step back from that? Because they're not wrong. It is on fire.
It is on fire. A lot of times it's because they're still on the field.
Yeah.
That's it. Because they're trying to control everything, and therefore there's no real priority. So one of the very first things that I do with my clients is, and I talk about this in my book, Achieving Balance, that was more of the time management book, is we figure out what's your most important priorities at work. Find the 4 or 5 most important activities. And that doesn't mean they're the most valued for the company or dollar per hour value. I have a system that is a game. You play this prioritization game, and it's a combination of all those things. What's the value? What do you like doing? Because you could be doing stuff that is really high value, but if you hate it, you actually will avoid it and you'll never get done. And this is why a lot of people stress themselves. I'm not supposed to do this. I'm supposed to, but if you don't like doing it, then delegate it. Get someone else that loves that. I don't like doing bookkeeping. I don't do the bookkeeping. And it's not because I can hire that out for $20, because I probably could. I pay for that because I don't enjoy spending my time looking at debits and credits. I did that in Accounting 200, and that was not my exciting journey, but some people love that. That is what they're made for. Don't spend your time doing that when you should be public speaking. Public speaking is my number one most important activity. So I consider being on podcasts as that. That's what I do. I'm the thought leader for the company. So if that's my number one, then I'm going to be spending most of my time there. What most business owners I find are struggling with this is they feel like everything's on fire. They don't have a prioritization. They don't have a game plan. They have a marketing plan. They call that their business plan. It's a marketing plan. It's how to grow it. But what do you do when you actually have clients? How do you manage employees? Ugh. So it's because they don't have what I call their work sweet spot identified. When you have your top 5 most important activities and you spend 80 to 90%, think of Pareto principle, spend 80 to 90% of your time there, then everything else will work itself out. And then everything else you either automate, because we can automate a lot of things these days, automate, delegate to a human, to another team member, to outsource, or delete. Automate, delegate, delete. And if you follow that process, and you can step away off the field very quickly, because now that process has allowed you to figure out, what am I really good at? Oh, I'm marketer. I'm the fulfillment, or I'm sales, or I'm the operations person. Fine. If that's where you're at, knock yourself out. But eventually, with the saved time, we save easy 75% of most of what I see in business owners are wasting their time in things that are less than that 5 priorities, that sweet spot. So they're wasting a good 3/4 of their day on things that have lesser priority. I'm not saying they're wasting it completely, but they're just down below. And when we can flip that script, it's incredible how much time they don't need to be working. And if they can just be spending 25% of the time working on the top priorities, now they have all this saved time to invest into their life, or take a bit of that and say, let's work on thought leadership now. Let's start to change this direction so that we can 10x the business.
So what are some of somebody's hearing all of this and they're thinking to themselves, this all sounds wonderful, but where do I start? This seems insurmountable. This seems like a too big of an idea.
Yeah.
What are some of the either quick tips or first steps that you want them to start thinking about or working on to just even make the smallest step towards beginning that journey?
Yeah. So when I mentioned earlier about couple development, that really is the number one most important principle. But that's not usually where I start. What I help people understand, especially business owners, is they need to work on their own limiting blocks. What are their fears? What's keeping them from being a type 3? Okay. Because most who are struggling right now and they're feeling that stress, they're either type 2 or type 1 right now. Okay. And that's not a personality. That's not a lifetime permanent diagnosis. No, this is tendencies. This is where you're at right now. This is business cycle, whatever you want to call it. But the reason why you're stuck there is you. And once you own that and you realize I'm the reason why this business is stuck here, then you can start moving forward. But you've got to understand what the subconscious mind is doing. It's trying to protect you from harm. It's trying to protect you from taking undue risk and killing yourself because, you're valuable to you, yourself, your family, the world around you. And that's understandable. But it also doesn't serve you if you were meant for something greater and you're stuck at something lower. God wants you to be successful. God wants you to be who he designed you to be. He wants you to achieve your mission in life, whatever that is. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be a public speaker. I'm not. But it is one way to grow the business as a business owner, to be able to speak and understand and bring those thoughts. But what I really am focusing on is that if you can get past those limiting beliefs, those fears, there's psychological blocks that are stuck. The great thing is we're born with just a couple of fears that are ingrained, which means everything else has been learned. So what I have is I have a process of going back and unlearning those things and relearning new ways to program the brain to get past these blocks and create new thoughts and habits that will eventually allow you to move forward. Because once you start taking action, then you can get rid of the fear and the subconscious mind gets reprogrammed. Oh, this is new normal. Okay, this is now I want it to be normal now. And you start to train the subconscious. So that's step one. Step two is then get on the same page financially with your spouse. So once you're out of the way, once you stop worrying about your own fears, then now the two of you can say, where are our values about money? And what do I fear about money? What do you fear about money? What are you excited about? Let's talk about these relationships that we have with money. If you can get past your limiting blocks and fears first, then getting on the same page is a lot easier. And then third is to make an effort to become a thought leader so that you can get off that field. So teamwork at home with your spouse, teamwork at work to really get you off the field. And quite honestly, sometimes the issues at work are who you have on the field with you. Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't want you to get off the field because they're afraid. Ooh, I don't want to take that over. Or, no, I need to text you every day about every single question I have. Maybe they're not the right ones to have on the field, or they need more education or training. Then you can address that. But this needs to be a team effort in the business as well as at home. So I go that way, individual first, couple, and then start to work on growing the business with your team as a thought leader.
Absolutely. So I've got a few questions that I like to ask all of my guests, but before I ask you those, Travis, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listener?
I'd say trust your gut. I know that's so general and people say this, but what I really mean is follow what God's telling you to do. Okay. It never goes wrong. I'm giving you frameworks. I'm giving you experience. I'm giving you philosophy and statistics and research. That's fine. That's great. But above all, if you pray to God and he tells you to do something very specific and you know you need to do it, have the courage to do it. Faith is action. And that's honestly, if you take nothing away than just that principle from today, take action. It's okay to do it scared. Everybody does that scared, but they realize that is fear and then they can conquer it. And once you conquer one thing, God will use you for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Some of us, we really want, I want to win the lottery. Well, maybe if you're not prepared to have $200 million all at once. Have you ever thought about that? Maybe you're not ready for this huge opportunity yet because you need to be molded so that when that opportunity comes along, you're ready and it doesn't destroy you. And so I say follow that, follow your gut and be fearless. Learn to use courage to tackle the fears that you have.
So my brand is Inspired Stewardship, and I run things through that lens of stewardship. Yet I've discovered over the years that's one of those words that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So for you, what does the word stewardship mean to you?
Again, back to our responsibilities and really back to God, I believe that we're stewards of this earth. We're stewards of our bodies. We're stewards of our time, and we're stewards of our money. Anything that truly doesn't belong to us, which is everything really that we're given in life, is a stewardship. And we will be responsible to report on that stewardship someday. So for me, if I look at money, I do think the best way to look at money is as a stewardship. We're going to come into this world, we'll use it, we'll earn it, we'll get taxed on it. A lot of things will happen as we grow our businesses and things. But to me, it really matters what type of person I've become through the use of it. How have I used this to further the mission that I am supposed to carry out? How am I helping other people? And I'm not saying that stewardship means you give all of your money away. Because quite honestly, if you're giving all your money away, you're giving it to nonprofits or other, let's say, political organizations or whatever. Now they have that stewardship. So a lot of times that's what, unfortunately, some of that misunderstanding is that, and a great book that I've read about this is The Family Bank by John Nebeker. He talks all about this financial stewardship. In my first book, Achieving Balance, I talk all about your time as a stewardship. It truly is our greatest asset is our time. And we don't know when that hourglass is going to be up. And like my dad, it could be very sudden. Or it could be like, hey, we have a diagnosis and you've got X amount of time to live and then you know what you're doing. But for most of us, we won't know until we get there. So how are you using that time? Or how are you using that dash in between the years of your birth and death? And then secondly is the time, stewardship of our family and our own health. I could go on. All areas of life truly are a stewardship, but it's our responsibility to use, to make better, and to really leave this world a better place.
So this is my favorite question that I like to ask everybody. Imagine for a moment that I invented this magic machine. And with this machine, I could take you from where you are today and transport you into the future, maybe 150, maybe 250 years. And through the power of this machine, you were able to look back and see your entire life, see all of the connections, see all of the ripples, see all of the impacts you've left. What impact do you hope you've left in the world?
Positive one, just in general. As I went through figuring out what my calling and mission in life is, and I identify this in Achieving Balance, I was very logical about this. I identified 10 areas of life that I thought everybody has their wheel of life, kind of areas of life, how, you know, what they are. And I identified them for me and I use them with my clients. But I looked back on each one and I cared more about what is it that I became in each of these areas. Because what happened is I wrote my dad's obituary. I've never written an obituary before. I was 25. I knew a little bit about the world and I was thrust into this because nobody wanted to do it. And I was like, fine, I'll do it. As I sat down and I was trying to tell the story of my dad's life, that took hours. It just took hours and hours. And I cried and I grieved, and it was a very life-changing experience because what I realized is someday somebody's going to read something like this for me. And what did I want to be told about me? And that's where I started, Scott. When I went back home, I was in California, went back home to Utah. We were living in northern Utah in Provo, and I was just finishing up school. And I sat down and I pulled out my journal and I wrote 2 pages of what I thought God wanted me to be in all these areas. And I call these values. These are the characteristics, principles that guide my life. They're more important than goals. They're more important than achieving, but it is like who I've become. And so I've kept that in the back of my mind. And that's what's driven change in me is to be there. But I really hope that over everything else that I do, that people see me as a man of faith, a man of courage, a family man, someone who was energetic and lively and very healthy and fit, someone who cared about his family, his children, and his wife, and loved them and was loyal to them. And then with my business, that people can look to me as a wise but also honest person and help them to achieve their mission in life. I could go on in all the other areas. I've got it all defined, but those are the most important ones in my life as I look back. And I honestly think those are all stewardships, as we've mentioned, and God will ask me to report on them. And I hope to have become that person that I have envisioned for now almost 20 years.
So what's on the roadmap? What's coming next for you as you continue on this journey?
Yeah, so the release of Marry and Grow Rich is happening right now. You can get it at marryandgrowrichbook.com. And you can follow my podcast at Balanced Growth Show. You can look that up. You can go to my website, maketimeinstitute.com. You can find details on achieving balance, Marry and Grow Rich. But I've got another book in me, Scott, and I'm working on that with a business partner yet to really announce that yet. But book one is really all about the individual, your individual values. Book two is shared values as a couple. Book three will be more about how do you then get these values, help your family, these family values, family mission, family goals, even family money methodologies, so that what you've created in your own life can live on as a legacy to the second, third, fourth generation. So I'm excited. That's the next project. Getting out in the podcast tour for the book and then getting on stages to talk about this is really the short term, but the long term, I'm always looking ahead. What's the next book? Oh, what's the next thing? It's part of, you got to have a trilogy, right? You got to have a trilogy if you want to be effective. And that's what I'm looking at down the road.
So you can find out more about Dr. Travis Parry over at his website, travisparry.com. I'll have a link to that along with the Make Time Institute, his podcast, The Balanced Growth Show, and the Marry and Grow Rich book over in the show notes as well. Travis, anything else you'd like to share with the listener?
I think I've said enough today on fear and courage, but I can't reemphasize that enough. That one last thing, that God loves you and he wants you to be successful. And honestly, that if I could say anything other than that, it would just be that God does love you and he wants you to achieve your mission in life and to have faith that he has faith in you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Go over to inspiredstewardship.com/iTunes rate, all one word, iTunes rate. It'll take you through how to leave a rating and review and how to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get every episode as it comes out in your feed. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.